After the war, a reporter asked Fleet Admiral William Halsey to name the machines that won the Pacific. Halsey ranked them in order. Submarines first, radar second, planes third, not tanks, not artillery. Bulldozers. Between 1942 and 1945, Caterpillar built over 56,000 crawler tractors for the Allied war effort. 20,000 of those were D7s, painted olive drab instead of Caterpillar yellow, shipped to every front on Earth. They cleared the beaches at Normandy, filled bomb craters under fire, and carved airstrips out of Pacific jungle in days. And on one island in the Solomons, a man named Aurelio Tassone drove his D7 straight into a Japanese machine gun nest, raised the blade as a shield, and buried 12 enemy soldiers alive. He named that bulldozer Helen after his wife. This is the story of how a piece of construction equipment became one of the most important weapons of the Second World War. Before Pearl Harbor, the United States Navy used civilian construction workers to build overseas bases. There was no military construction force. When the Japanese captured Wake Island in December 1941, they seized more than 1,200 of those civilian workers. 98 were executed, 82 more died in captivity. 100 were kept on Wake to build fortifications for the Japanese. When that work was done, all of them were killed. Under international law, civilians who resisted enemy attack could be executed as guerrillas. The workers at Wake had no legal right to fight back, and the Navy had no armed construction force to replace them. That changed on January 5, 1942, when Rear Admiral Ben Moriel received authorization to recruit men from the construction trades into a new kind of military unit, the Naval Construction Battalions. The abbreviation Seabees became the name, the Seabees. Their motto was simple: we build, we fight. Seabees were not ordinary recruits. The Navy wanted experienced tradesmen, not 18-year-olds. The age range for enlistment was 18 to 50, but several men over 60 managed to enlist. These were welders, mechanics, electricians, steelworkers, carpenters, and heavy equipment operators who had built America's roads, dams, and bridges during the Depression. They knew machines, they knew construction, and they were about to learn war. The Seabees trained at bases in Rhode Island, California, and Mississippi, learning demolition, small arms, and amphibious tactics alongside their construction skills. Then they shipped out, often landing alongside or just behind the first wave of Marines hitting a beach. They carried rifles slung over their shoulders and drove bulldozers through the surf. In the Pacific, the war was an island-hopping campaign. Every island the Allies seized needed an airstrip, a supply depot, roads, fuel storage, ammunition magazines, and housing. These things did not exist in the jungle. The Seabees built them, often while the battle for the island was still raging overhead. On Guadalcanal, the Japanese had begun constructing a runway before the Marines captured it in August 1942. The Seabees arrived a month later to finish the job. They completed the airstrip. The Americans named it Henderson Field. The Japanese wanted it back. They bombed it every day. Every day the Seabees rebuilt it, sometimes under direct fire from Japanese artillery. Henderson Field became the pivot point of the entire Guadalcanal campaign because the Seabees refused to let it stay broken. Their primary tool in all of this was the bulldozer. Caterpillar D7 tractors and D8 tractors, fitted with Letourneau blades and scrapers, did the bulk of the work. The D7 was 80 horsepower with a 4-cylinder diesel engine, weighed about 14 tons, and could tow over 11,000 kilograms. With the right blade, it could clear jungle, grade roads, fill craters, push debris, drag disabled vehicles, and build an airstrip from raw ground in under 2 weeks. R.G. Letourneau, the man who supplied 70% of all Allied heavy earth-moving equipment during the war, had a personal philosophy about his work. He gave 90% of his income to Christian missions and kept 10% for himself. He said God had a bigger shovel. The Allies deployed more than 100,000 tractors during the war. In the Pacific alone, Seabees used bulldozers to build more than 400 bases, 111 major airstrips, 2,558 ammunition magazines, 700 blocks of warehouses, housing for 1.5 million men, and fuel storage for 100 million gallons of gasoline. In the Aleutians, Seabees pushed a mountain into the sea with bulldozers to build a bomber airfield. On Tinian, where the airstrip could not be built because the narrow beaches were blocked by coral cliffs, Seabees invented movable ramps that made the landing possible in the first place. Once they were ashore, their bulldozers turned an unfinished Japanese airfield into a fully operational American bomber base, while the fighting was still going on around them. That airfield on Tinian is where the B-29s that dropped the atomic bombs took off from. But the Seabees weren't supposed to be combat troops. They were builders. The fighting was supposed to be someone else's job. On October 27, 1943, that distinction stopped mattering. The invasion of the Treasury Islands in the Solomons was underway. An hour after the first wave hit the beach on Mono Island, 8 Seabees and their commanding officer from Company A of the 87th Naval Construction Battalion landed with a jeep and 2 bulldozers to clear a road along the jungle beach. A Japanese pillbox made of heavy coconut logs was pouring machine gun fire into the New Zealand troops they were attached to. The advance had stalled. There were no tanks available. Lieutenant Charles Turnbull looked at machinist's mate second class Aurelio Tassone and told him the pillbox had to go. Tassone was sitting in a 24-ton Caterpillar D8 that he had named Helen, after his wife back in Milford, Massachusetts. He raised the blade as a shield and drove straight at the fortification in low gear. Machine gun rounds hammered off the steel. When he reached the pillbox, Turnbull signaled. Tassone dropped the blade and crushed the entire structure, burying all 12 defenders under logs and sand. Then, as Time magazine reported it, he methodically bladed earth over the wreckage as if he were smoothing a rough spot in a road. Aurelio Tassone received the Silver Star. He was sent back to the United States in 1944, where he visited the Caterpillar factory in Peoria, Illinois, to speak to the workers building the machines. His story inspired the climactic scene in the 1944 John Wayne film The Fighting Seabees. But Tassone's story was not unique. At Guadalcanal, an Alice Chalmers advertisement described what happened to one tractor during an attack. 6 men were killed in succession at the controls, and the 7th climbed on and kept it rolling. On Iwo Jima in February 1945, the 133rd Naval Construction Battalion suffered the most casualties in Seabee history. Marines could not get off the beach because their Amtraks were bogging down in the volcanic black sand. Seabees, under direct enemy fire, bulldozed roads off the beach so the Marines could finally move inland. Seabees from the 117th Construction Battalion had also built the flame-throwing tanks the Marines used on Iwo Jima, combining features from 3 different flame units into a new design called the KBH-2. The Marines said those tanks were the best single weapon of the entire operation. Troops preferred to follow them over standard armor because of the fear they put in the enemy. In Europe, the bulldozer played a different role, but it was no less critical. On D-Day, armored D-7s cleared beach obstacles, filled bomb craters, and removed disabled landing craft from the surf while the fighting continued around them. On Omaha Beach, Private Vinton Dove and Private William Shoemaker took turns operating a bulldozer under severe enemy fire to fill an anti-tank ditch so Allied tanks could push inland. Both received the Distinguished Service Cross. After the beaches, D-7S cleared the bombed-out streets of Saint-Lô and carved paths through the hedgerow country of Normandy. By the end of the war, the Army Corps of Engineers had used bulldozers to remove 183 million cubic yards of rubble from Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, and Dresden. Major General Eugene Raybould, the head of the Army Corps of Engineers, said it plainly in 1944. Victory seems to favor the side with the greater ability to move dirt. He also said something else that mattered more. By the war's end, it was evident that American construction capacity was the one factor of American strength which the enemy consistently underestimated, and the one for which they had no basis for comparison. They had seen nothing like it. Germany had tanks. Japan had discipline. The United States had the ability to land on a piece of jungle or a bombed-out beach and turn it into an operational military base within days. That ability ran on diesel fuel and Caterpillar tracks. The Seabees earned 5 Navy Crosses and 33 Silver Stars during World War II. Nearly 300 were killed in action. Another 500 died in construction accidents. When the war ended, the surplus D7 tractors that had carved airstrips across the Pacific and cleared rubble across Europe were sold off cheap into the civilian market. They became the machines that built post-war America, grading highways, clearing suburbs, and laying the groundwork for the interstate system. The same tractor that buried a Japanese pillbox on Mono Island went on to flatten the land where your neighborhood probably sits. The D7 is still in production today. It has been manufactured in one form or another since 1938. It still carries the Caterpillar name. It is still painted yellow now, not olive drab. But the machine that Admiral Halsey ranked alongside submarines and radar as one of the instruments that won the war is still out there, still doing what it has always done, moving dirt, building what needs to be built, and when it had to, fighting. If you found this story worth your time, subscribe. We cover the machines that shaped history from the ground up.